Hey guys, welcome back to the Unfiltered Gamer Kickstarter board game review. Today's game up on the tabletop is called Tsukuyumi. Tsukuyumi is for 2 to 5 players. It's by Felix Murdercat, and it is a game in which the god of the moon, Tsukuyumi, is basically raining terror on the civilization, and everybody's going to play as their own unique factions, and these factions are all trying to regain certain portions of territory or conquering certain things. All the different factions have their own missions, as well as a mission that is available, or missions that are available for everybody to try and complete. And you're going to go throughout rounds of different things, a round of combat basically. And after a certain amount of rounds, the game will be over. However, you could also play to a certain amount of points, and depending on the different types of characters you have is going to depend on what you're trying to do in the case of the game. For instance, if you want to play as like the American guys, they're trying to secure as much territory as they once had, now they've lost it. Or if you're playing as a swarm, you're just trying to control everything. The dragons are trying to burn down hellfire and brimstone on everything. And then you have crazy stuff like these cyber samurais that are just big, huge, hulking humanoids that are trying to, I guess, reign dominance. And you've got whales that do a bunch of other stuff as well. They're actually trying to cleanse the land and protect their territory as well. The basic premise of the game is simply to fight off other species coming to get you, as well as maintain your missions, control your certain plots, as well as avoid the different evil neutral units, that Tsukuyumi's neutral units that are coming around, the Oni, that are trying to also hinder you in your process to gain control of the land. And that is the basic idea of how you play the game, Tsukuyumi. Let me go ahead and show you how it looks. So here we have the game, Tsukuyumi, and it is partially set up, and we'll go ahead and set up in a little bit here, but I'm going to go ahead and show you what the contents are. So there are 6 different types of armies, and you get to choose one of them. Right here we have the Dark Seed, which is a swarming horde. We have the Camp... I can't even spell it, but it's basically the Hunt for Dragons. These guys are like the mechanical dudes. Over here we've got the Last of the Human Remains, which are the Nomads, and they are the roving army, or the roaming army. As well as you're going to be having these tokens here. These tokens here represent, you're going to be controlling spaces with them. You're all going to be getting a type of mission objective, and everybody's going to have one of these. And it's going to be a plethora of different objectives that everybody can complete. So if you bring this army, this is the objective you bring with you for everyone to attempt to complete. You're all going to have your own unique battle cards. There's 4 of them, as well as you're going to have certain armies will have like upgrade cards and stuff like that. Then you're going to have weapons as well for certain people, and this has got mines here for the humans, as well as everybody's going to have their own unique area in which they spawn at. And spawning has specific rules on the map here, where you can place it either adjacent to one of the tiles or on top of one of the outer ring, but you can't place it anywhere here on the moon, and you can't place it anywhere after the first tile. There's a couple other placement rules, and some of them actually ignore that specific rule as well. You're also going to be getting action cards dealt to, I believe 6 per player, as well as event cards. You're going to draw 2 of them and place them face up, and you can choose them on the occasion to do certain things. There is the neutral army, which is the Oni, and they are actually right here, and they start with a certain spawn of Onis here. And they have their own unique attack card and the defense options with them, as well as their own placement card. In a 3-player game, you have 20 different tiles you're going to be laying out randomly. There's also missions in which you can go ahead and change that around, and also a plethora of different other tiles that you can use for unique gaming experiences. This over here is the initiative tracker, and for every single person or character you have in the game or army, you're going to be setting up their initiative based on their highest point value up here in the top or right-hand side of the area. So this is 18, 19, and 15, so you'd set them up accordingly. Some of them actually change or differ based on what it says at the top upward corner here. So like this guy, the dragons, they actually can only be, they're always 3rd in initiative no matter what. And this tracker, you can actually move it away, just so you guys can see it, but they can be changed based on what cards are played throughout the game. That's pretty much all the stuff you're going to get in the game, other than just the rulebook and a big, nice box. Let's go ahead and talk about your turn and how it works. So after setup is done, and I'll show you setup in just a little bit here, then you're going to do the action phase, or the rounds. I'm going to explain that a little bit. First of all, everybody's going to have a certain amount of action cards, I believe 6 for each player, and you're going to select one and based on the back of what it says. After you've selected that card, you're going to put it face down, and then based on turn initiative, you're going to then get to choose any two of these actions here. Now you can't choose the same one twice, and you can't choose to attack before you move. You always have to move before you attack. After everybody has gone ahead and done both of these two actions, then the next phase of the game will begin, which is flipping over this card. And this is where the uniqueness comes in. You have a blue, the green, and slash like purple phase, and then you have the red phase, 2, 3, and 4. Also due to initiative, it'll also be based on that. Everybody will do the blue phase based on initiative, then the number 3 phase, and then finally the red phase here. And after that is all completed, then you're going to go ahead and move on to the next round. Very, very simple as to how it works. After 3 rounds of play, or depending on how big you want or how long or large you want the game to be, will be dependent on that. But then you're going to do the scoring aspect of the game. Let me show you a little bit about setup and a couple turns of play. So here we have the game set up, and as you can see, all 3 of the different factions are listed here. You've got over here the blue faction. This actually is an interesting one. The swarm can be placed anywhere on the board, so he's going to spawn right there. He's breaking the rules. Whenever a card or a faction rule changes what the normal rules say, you follow that faction rule. Over here we've got the KGE or KG3 guys here, and you start with a certain amount of different dudes here. So this one starts with these 3, and it tells you on the back of all the different cards here what they start with. So if you look at here on this thing here, it's going to show you all the different symbology and all that kind of stuff, as well as how you gain points in the game, as well as the turn order of the round. It even show you a little bit about how to play your game, as far as like your units are concerned, as well as the origin story. And then if you look over here, it's going to tell you like what your different abilities do, what happens when certain guys die, your special ability for your character or class, as well as all of your unit stats, that kind of stuff. It'll also tell you where you place units and how many you place. As well as on the front side of the board, it's going to show you all the different units you have, as well as your faction effect, which takes a place based on your action card, possibly, your normal mission, which you're trying to complete to gain extra victory points, as well as your defensive ability here that can be used depending on what's happening when you're being attacked. Also, I've gone ahead and distributed out 6 action cards to everybody, so everybody's going to have 6, and the rest of them are going to be removed from the game. They're not needed. These cards are going to be drafted periodically throughout the game. You're also going to have your unique battle cards, like I talked about before. Most factions have 4, however, some of them have more. For instance, the KG3 has 6 different ones. These are all representing the different goals based on the factions, and each one of the factions brings in their own unique goal, which you're going to try and accomplish throughout the game to gain those points, as well as a bunch of additional units you can be summoning throughout the game. Now, the game's pretty simple. After you've placed your bases here, you're going to place out 3 markers to represent territories you control. They have to be adjacent or 1 space out to as close as possible. For instance, right here we have the 2 spaces here, so it has to be 1. So it would be here, here, or here, I imagine. And this would actually work as well. You get to choose 3 spaces. This one is unique. It is a bug faction, so it has actually additional spawners. These count as occupied spaces at the end of the game, so that has something to do with the rules. There's a certain amount of Oni that are going to be released randomly and placed on the Oni board, as well as over here it's the same thing as the KG3. It has the different units that I've actually set up for the nomads, basically. So now that everything's pretty much set up, the last thing you need to do is throw down 2 event cards from the event deck so that they can be chosen. You can draw from the top of the deck or use any of these guys here, as well as having the Oni faction available, as well as the Oni battle card. Now, the first thing everybody's going to do on their turn is they're going to take an action card of their choosing, and they're going to put it face down in front of them. After everybody has gone ahead and done that, they're going to then actually partially draft their actions. So everybody's got their 1. And then the decks of cards, all the action cards, are going to be passed along to the next player, just like this. Removing a little bit of the luck involved in the game. Almost no luck, I would say, even. Then, based on the initiative order over here, it's going to determine who gets to go first. And as we see, the swarm is going to go first. So they get to do their 2 actions. And they can choose to draw an event card and use an event. And they can choose to use it or not use it. Maybe he would want to do this one here, which says move up or down on the initiative board by 1. So he wouldn't actually need to do that because he's already at 1. But he could draw one from the top, maybe. Let's see what this one does. All units in any one area of your choice may immediately move to one area. He'd use that, then he'd discard it. And so he actually can choose an area. Maybe he wants to have these guys here, and he can choose to move them to an adjacent area. That would be his 1 choice of the action card. He can then actually move again, maybe. He could do one of his battle attacks. what else can he do? You may execute one battle action. Yep, you can recruit a unit for something worth 1. And you can see on this chart here the value of the units. So this one's worth 1, and then 2, and then all the way at the end here is 3. So if he wanted to, he could simply choose one of these units here, which is a small one, maybe this B, and recruit it. And he can put it on any of his spaces he has occupied. So he placed it there, I suppose. Then he would be done with his two actions on the action card. Remember, you can't do more than one of the same type. You would then move on to the next initiative tracker, which would be the KG3, and they would actually do their own thing too. Maybe he wanted to move, and after he moved all his units, however he wanted to move them, actually maybe he'd move this guy over here. Then he can perform, maybe he wants to perform battle action. Battle action is pretty simple. He has battle cards in his hand. He can choose whatever ones he wants to. He can choose to conquest, which is going to let him control an area if he has more conquest points than the other enemies. He could choose to do an atomic blast, which does tons of extra damage. There's annihilation he can do, holy conquest, a whole bunch of different options. I'm not going to go ahead and explain fully, but the idea is if he has more conquest points, he can simply put one of these guys down here. And this actually does help him because he's trying to gain a hold of 7 territories, which will give him victory at the end of the game, as well as all the territory he owns at the end of the game is going to give him points as well. After he did that, maybe the blue guy would do something similar. He would also do as one of his conquest actions, placing something like that. Then the unique thing about the game is all of the actions flip over. So everybody who has an action card will flip over those actions, and you can see them right here. Nice and easy to see them, I suppose. And then they're going to perform them based on initiative as well. And it's going to go to the blue phase, and then it's going to go to the green, and then to the red. And as you see here, this one only lets you use a red. So if that's the one he chose, he's not going to be participating in the blue phases. And as they go throughout the same turn order, just like initiative value for the other side of the card, then they're just going to do it. The blue phase would be first, and it would be the swarm here. So they would do move up or down on the track by 2. That's not very useful for him because he was our number 1. Then this player would draw an event and then use it. And all the symbology tells you, like certain ones say to move up or down the initiative tracker, or drawing cards here. This one's going to be recruiting new individuals. And you can never not do, you can choose to do or not do certain things on the cards here, but you always have to do the Oni option, these purple things. So whatever it says for the Oni to do, moving them, fighting with them, using their battle cards, so on and so forth. Then the last thing here is going to be the red phase, which is all of your units may move 2 area tiles. As well as on the other side here, it tells you certain things as well. So in the blue phase here, this says that you can use his faction ability. And over here it says that he can use 2 of his battle action cards. And that could be to a fight or to dominate or any of that kind of stuff as well. After all this goes through, then you go through another round of play, and it simply repeats itself, starting with the prior to the draft, picking one of your action cards, drafting them all, and continuing the game just like that. So that's the basic idea of how to play the game. Now obviously there is a ton of more stuff in this game. There's all of the different units do different things. For instance, I would just look at some of these guys here. The squad leader for the humans lets you move an additional space, I think. You've got privates that don't do too much. Hunters move additional space. I think squad leaders do something with people who work within them. You've got the dogs who also can move. You've got the different, let's see here, the Stuff Commander here, Stuff Sergeant. He actually puts down mines on the space that he's occupying if you get the faction effect. And whenever people walk into that space, they're going to take 15 points of damage. You also are going to get weapons on the human side that are going to let you flip them over and exhaust them to do additional damage for each human you've got. But you only have a certain amount, so you have to be careful with that. You can buy grenades if you purchase more than 2 heroes during your turn. You've got things like this guy here that allows you on the cards to negate certain area effects, as well as this radioactivity that can happen when, like, for instance, the KG3 does stuff like nuclear attacks and whatnot. Then you can drop down this radioactivity. Sometimes you're going to get rockets when you have different characters, and there's just a ton of different character effects and abilities that you're going to have throughout this entire game. Another thing to note too is when we look at these spaces here, whenever you occupy a space and then control it or dominate it, you're going to potentially be getting extra points at the end of the game here if it says you're going to get certain points like 2 SP. Also, if we're going to look at different pieces here, we're going to also see this little red area. What does that mean? That means that you can't enter or exit from this location here unless a card will allow you to place something like this, a marker on here that will block that off so that people can go through or not go through. You can also attach pieces that will negate players being able to walk, just like, so it's kind of the same exact thing, but a card can actually give you that ability as well. And a lot of these stem from stuff like events being drawn, as well as the different action cards, because every action card is different. They all have their own unique kind of choices you can make or choose to do. Also, during that drafting phase, you can choose which ones work best for you. Now, like I said before, after 3 rounds, the game can be over, but you could play more or less, and there's also missions in the game that can change the way of play as well. Not only that, but in a 3-player game, like I said before, you can get 20 of these guys and put them down however you want, but that's going to differ depending on players as well as depending on the mission. Anyway, let me go ahead and show you a little bit about scoring the game. Scoring the game is very simple. Now, the first thing you go about is checking to see which places you've actually controlled. For instance, the human player here has 6 spaces that he controls, and that would give him 6 points. If he happened to have this space here, it would give him 7 points because you get an additional 2 points for having it on this space as well. Also, you're going to have different missions for your specific character, right? This one says Old Strength. Control 3 Fireborn and 7 area tiles at the end of the round. And if you can do that, you're going to gain 2 points. And every character has one of those abilities as well. Not only that, but you're also going to get additional points at the end of the game based on these mission cards, which I was talking about, that come with each different type of faction, eliminating 3 adversary units or eliminating 3 Oni units, which are these guys here. Finally, holding 7 territories. So these are going to give you bonus points as well. And finally, you're also going to be getting points by landing on that moon space here. It's going to give you additional points. There's a couple other ways you can gain points as well, but that's the basic idea. You add all the points up together at the end of the last round, and whoever has the most points is the winner of Tsukuyumi. So what do I think about Tsukuyumi? Well, the first thing I noticed about the game is there's a lot to it. There's a lot of rules in the game, and that is because there's a lot of little small things that is involved throughout the game. This player sheet does help a great amount, and you're going to have a lot of different stuff on here that's going to help you play your character as well as learn about all the different unique aspects of each and every faction. And all the factions are incredibly different. One faction here, this is this KG3 unit. There's only 5 of them, but they're all extremely powerful. And also it has to do with how you attack and stuff like that. For instance, you're going to have a health and a defense on the bottom of all these units here. And if you have more attack, you can actually kill certain units, as well as the defense will prevent you from taking damage, as well as the leadership up here, which is going to determine whether you can control certain areas. So all of that has to be calculated formulaically as you play these rounds. The game would seem like it would be rather short because it's only 3 rounds, and as you saw, I just kind of went through a round of play. However, I didn't discuss all the intrinsicies of attacking and whatnot. You can actually go and check it out on the Kickstarter page. I have a walkthrough explaining all that good stuff. But otherwise, I'm just going to talk about all this other stuff, right? Like, the art is fantastic in this game. Like I showed you before, the Fireborn, but I didn't show you that there's also the Boar Lords, and this here, these Cyber Samurai. And then, of course, there's the Swarm, and then you got the G3 or whatever, and then you've got the Nomads, and I think there's probably even more as well. I think I saw some whales or something like that as well. But in the game, you're trying, it's extremely strategic, and you have to be very aware that this game is super heavy. It might seem light, and it does feel light as far as how it explains, but there's a lot of stuff going on in a lot of the different spaces, and you have to understand all the different terminology, understanding where you can go on spaces, where you can't go. There's certain terrain that you can't pass, or if you go on it, you have to stop. Certain areas of the board are going to give you more points than others, knowing not only what your characters do, but what also everybody else's do. I mean, if you just look at the Swarm guy over here, it's going to tell you this wasp is flying. It gets plus a movement. The breeder lets you get spawn 1 additional unit every single time you spawn units. The worker may be upgraded for a single unit. Basically, like an upgrade. You can say, oh, instead of buying a unit, I'm going to upgrade it to a warrior, planter, or a conqueror. And then you've got stuff like you can this conqueror can be sacrificed for an attack action in the blue phase, and so on and so forth. There's a ton of stuff and all the different things going on. So that would probably be a positive and a negative if you think about it like that way, because it's very complex. And if you're looking for a more light game, a more like simple turn-based style game, this is not going to be it for you. However, if you do want deep strategic thinking, if you do like the fact that it takes place over a very short amount of rounds, but there is a lot of thinking for each and every one of those turns and each and every one of those phases. And if you do take into account that every phase does take a bit of time, because you have to go throughout the main phase and the blue one and the green one and the red one, as well as all the different Oni units moving around, stuff like that. Sometimes you're going to want to fight, sometimes you aren't, because there's a plethora of different missions you're going to be wanting to accomplish, and it's going to determine based on around what you're going to want to do, and you always have a ton of options. So that's really cool about the game. The artwork is really solid. The game does flow in a fairly simple manner, but I think for certain people it's going to probably tend to get boring, specifically if you play with a large amount of players, because the game it's got a lot going on. However, if you're deep into strategy and you definitely like the style, the tile, it's always going to be different, the tile placement, all that kind of stuff, as well as how you're going to be moving, understanding all the different units, all the different aspects of the game where you can move through or can't move through, the event deck that's going to be cycled through, and even the kind of cool, unique action drafting card mechanic, which is kind of cool. I think you're going to like Tsukuyumi. Definitely check it out. Alright guys, thanks for watching another Unfiltered Gamer Kickstarter board game review. If you like this video and like to see more, you can check the rest of our videos here on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and comment. It all really helps. As well as, if you're interested in Tsukuyumi, go ahead and check it out in the description below, currently on Kickstarter. Alright guys, go ahead and check out our website, unfilteredgamer.com. Tons of blog posts, giveaways, Kickstarter lists, as well as we're going to be having a giveaway for the 7th continent. That's coming out in the next day or so, I believe. As well as checking out the rest of our giveaways on the site, and checking out our affiliates, everythingboardgames.com and The Giveaway Geek. They are also, Everything Board Games participating in the giveaway with us as well. And The Giveaway Geek has tons of their own unique giveaways and content as well. Alright guys, well, thank you for watching this episode, and once again, I look forward to seeing you next time.